Hey everyone, my name is Jacob. I go by the stage name DAW, and today we're going to run through how to build your live sets using the Maschine DAW and using the Maschine MK3 as a central hub for your whole set, right? So we're talking, instead of using decks, instead of using Ableton Live, we're going to be using the Maschine MK3 as a central hub for transitioning between tracks, laying out samples or playing different samples. We're going to use it to select different instruments. And if you don't have other controllers or other keyboards and stuff, you could also be using that to play your pieces as well. So this is really a tutorial for your people who've made full tracks on the Maschine that don't have the Ableton Live like me, but still want to be able to play live. This is how I've actually set everything up. So if you get some value out of this, or if you do like the content, please remember to like and subscribe, as it does really help me out. And if you do want to check out my music, it is on all platforms under the name DAW. Without any more delays, let's get right into it, and I'll show you how I actually break down and set up my live sets. The first thing we want to do is we really want to just set up the DAW so that it is going to work for us live. One of the things is that I don't want the click track to be coming out of the main speakers when I'm playing, but I still want to be using a click track with my headphones, right? So what we want to do is we want to get into the channel, and we're going to move over to the master section. And on here, you're going to see the audio and the cue sections, and they're both set to EXT1. All we really need to do is just move this to EXT2. And now we're going to have the click track coming out of the headphones, but not out of the speakers, right? But some people, they only want the click to come out of here and not the music. If that is you, then what we want to do is move to the settings. You've got your different tabs here, and we're going to move over to the hardware tab. And you'll see line out the MK3 outputs. We can change this from line out to plus phones. Now, if you have it set to plus phones, it means you're going to hear the music and the click track. If you have it set to just line out, it means that the music is going to be coming out of the speakers, but the headphones will only play the click. So it's really just a preferential thing. However, for myself, I do want to opt into plus phones. If you're playing live, you might not have a good monitor system, or you might not be able to hear fully what's going on. And I think having full control over your mixing live will really, really help you out. So that is why I've kind of set mine to plus phones as well. So if we want to move to the DAW and we want to see it in the DAW, we're going to get to the master, and you'll see here on the cue section, you've got the EXT2, which we've selected from the Maschine MK3, right? Also, you'll notice then that you've got the two separate levels, or the two separate output levels. If you want to be changing the volume on your headphones, then you're just going to be changing this one here. One other thing that I want to do when I'm setting up my DAW is I want to put in a limiter. Now, what this is really going to do is it's just going to stop any clipping if I'm making mistakes or if I haven't set up the project properly. I'm not going to go into how to use the limiter. What I will say as a tip, though, is I just use the stock limiter that's in the Maschine DAW. What we don't want to do is we don't want to use excess CPU on, I guess, unnecessary things, because the more stuff I add into this project, the more chances I've got of it lagging out or there being issues when I'm playing live. So I really just want to keep things as simple as possible to save my CPU space. And make sure that I don't, I guess, overload my project, because these can get quite big if you start doing, hour-long sets, 2-hour-long sets with all of these different tracks and components in them as well. So, this, having the limiter, setting it up properly, will mean that you won't get into accidental clipping, but you can still have a lot of your music sounding very similar across the board, and will kind of give you a little bit of grace if you haven't mixed things perfectly. Which can happen when you're playing live, obviously. What we're going to do now is we're going to close this, and we're going to open up just a single track that I've got, and I'll show you how I'm pulling out the stems and getting things ready for the live set. Okay, so this is a project. This is my new single that's coming out very, very soon. And I want to use some of this for part of my live set. So let's just say this is just a small part of it, right? I want to play the piano. So I know that I'm already going to need to remove the piano part from this. And then there are also other parts, for example, where I've got samples. So if I'm playing the actual track, I've got this sample that comes in here. I think it's cool if I could trigger that. Right, and then there's also the other samples.
Hey baby, it's me. I was just calling to chat with you a little.
The idea is that what I need to do firstly, and I would recommend just save this separately as like live version or something as a project, just so you don't mess with your original track, and don't make that mistake. Just go ahead and mute anything that you plan on playing. So in this instance, I'm muting the piano parts that I've got that I don't want heard. So if I was to go back to the section I had before, there is no piano now, but I've still got all my other parts. The way I've set up my DAW is that I'm all of these different groups. If I've got multiple drum parts, for example, like the conga kit, the drums here, I'm sending it all to my bus, and then I've just grouped everything up so that I've got 5 simple groups with the whole track in that. These 5 groups are the ones that I'm exporting, okay? So the way I'm doing that, obviously export audio, I'm just setting the range of what I want to export. If you're just doing transitions, you're only going to be exporting that transition. If you're just doing the bulk of the track, obviously like this one here, most of the track I want to export. I just don't want to have the sample at the start. I want to be able to trigger that sample myself, right? The source may change depending on how you've laid out your project. In this instance, I'm only exporting the sounds from my bus, right? So that would be these ones here. And I'm normalizing the stems because it's going to bring, I guess, your different projects are going to have different volumes or different ways that you've mixed things, and it might not really sound the same or similar. This is going to make your life a lot easier when you're mixing and putting together your live set, is by normalizing all of the stems that you've got. And depending on your preference, you can either loop optimize and just have it looping over, or you can just set them as like one-shot stems, I guess. In my opinion, I found it easier to work with the loop optimize stems. Before we're going to quit out of our DAW, we also want to make sure that we have, I guess, saved the instruments that we plan to use. I want the exact same piano sound, and I don't want to have to go into my new live project, find the instruments and do all of that. So the easiest way I found to do it is just go and save this and have your, I guess, project, have your folder with all of the sounds that you plan to use for your project, just saved in there. Once we have that saved up there, then it's easy to just import it straight into my next project and have my instruments ready to go. Okay, so that's pretty much everything we need to do to, I guess, pull the stems out, pull the instruments that I plan to use. You should know where your samples are kept or what folder or where they are for access to put into your live set as well. But if you aren't sure, you can always just do the same thing, save as, boom, and you can save the sounds in there. So now let's go ahead and open up the, I guess, live project that I've been working on, and I can show you how it all sort of fits into that DAW and how it fits into the project. This is the project I'm working on, and as you can see, we have a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to break down what I've done here. We're going to focus on just the Never There part of this set, and I'll just kind of show you how I built that, right? So we're going to create a new group. The group will be called the same track. This Never There is the track, so we're going to make a group called Never There, and we're going to create a pattern, which is going to have the bulk of the track. We're going to create a new scene. That scene is going to be called Never There as well. And ideally, we want to color them the same so we're not going to get confused when we're playing live. So everything associated with that track is going to be orange. Import your stems and mix them. import your sounds, import your samples, so everything is there ready to go. We're going to create a scene with the same name. In this instance, part of my transition out of this track is I want to be able to fade out the bulk of the track but leave the synths still playing. So that is why I've also got, I guess, another pattern here called Never There, and it has my synth stems actually laid out in that pattern, okay? So that is why you're not seeing the synth group here. It is because when I'm transitioning out, for example, I can what's playing is the synth part, because that's actually part of the different group. That's this one here is what we're still playing, whereas these ones here had all been faded out. Okay, so that's why I've kind of split them up into those ones, and that's where you're kind of going to get creative with your set, right? If you want to have sort of dedicated transition scenes, then you're going to create a new pattern. So in this case, I want to be able to play the piano, but I want to be able to play the piano before the drums come in, before the bulk of the track. So in this case, I just have like one bar that's just looping over and over again with literally nothing playing, and it's just it is just a dead scene, right? And so I can trigger that, and then now I've got full comfort that I can take my time with whatever I'm doing in there, and nothing else is going to play. To transition, then it's going to depend on what your, I guess, intentions are. To change the setup, you can shift and the follow. So if we're going to go into the grid, we can change between whether the scene is going to trigger as I'm hitting it, or whether the scene changes at the end of the scene, end of the bar. So in this case here, if I've got it set at 116, then it means that as soon as I hit that next scene, it's going to completely transition to the next part. Again, depending on your set, depending on your goals, what you're planning on doing. For me, I'm actually transitioning between these because, you know, I could have whole tracks and I don't want to have to think about timing the transition at the end. I can just have it set to scene and then it's going to transition scenes. Look, honestly, that's most of it. And I guess the only other tip to help with some transitions then, you know, I'm going to pull up a different song just as an example. So sorry to get a bit confusing here, but if we're, you know, going to go to this one here, as you can see, I've extended the pattern to be way longer than the actual track. And the reason why is that I don't want to run the risk of, if I'm doing an extended transition, or if my timing gets out in the transition, or if I want to take a bit of time, or if I want my set to be a bit malleable, I don't want the track to replay while I'm transitioning. So what I've done, as you can see, is I've created some automation and I've just pulled the, you know, the parts that I want to have. Either you can have a fading out or you can just completely mute them. And so in this instance here, you know, all I've got is, and if we're going to go down to pad mode now, I've just got that one Glock part that's playing in loop, and I can comfortably let that run for literally a couple of minutes, and while I'm doing my transitions, etc. In this case here, you know, I've just kind of mapped things to a mixer, so I can fade out this section, or I can fade in the next track gateway. As you can see, I've got now we're going to go back to, if I want my scene to change, and now we're in a new track. So that's how I'm laying it out. It's really all in the setup, and then it's just practicing the set. I think I've covered most of the main bits and nuts and bolts, and I guess in the next video I can show you, or in the next part I can show you just what I've done in terms of setting up my synths and setting up my other controllers. But really today was just, the focus was just going to be on setting up the machine so that it's ready to go. You can use this as a hub to transition between the different sections. You can use this, if I'm in pad mode now, I can be transitioning between different instruments, or I can be playing different samples, or, you know, I can have my drum kit. Yeah, and that's what I'm using that for. Obviously, I've got other parts, like I've got my synth here and my keyboard here, and I've got some faders and some knobs and things which I can MIDI map to different groups, which you know, you can do with your group macros. You know, for example, and that's just allowing my transitions to be a bit more smoother and stuff. But not everyone's going to have that kind of gear. So, you know, for now, you can always just be in the mixer and you can be turning things down in the mixer. It is tedious doing it that way, and I would recommend, if you plan on doing this, like, you can, having those extra faders and knobs on other controllers can definitely help you with your sets. But yeah, look, hey, I hope that you've gotten some value out of this. It's really how I've just set up my live sets. If you guys got better ways of doing it, I'm all ears, because I'm still definitely learning this as well. But hey, if you've gotten something out of this video, if that was enjoyable for you, please, again, like, subscribe. It does really, really help me out. And I really hope that even if there's just one person out there that I've helped, then I'm glad that I've just spent a bit of time doing this video. So thanks again for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you next time for the next video.